Hey y'all, this is Coco from Rooted. Pronouns they, them. I'm the community healing director. We're back with another discussion. Today we're going to talk about liberation practices. Just let's go around and introduce ourselves again really quick just to refresh folks, I guess.
Great. My name is Heather, she, hers. I'm the Youth Enricher Director here at Rooted.
And I'm Mrs. Moon, she, her, and I'm the Justice Director here at Rooted.
Clementine Mitchell, founder, executive director here at Rooted. Any pronouns with love?
All right, and so today we're just going to dig a little bit deeper on liberation practices. This sort of is a continuation of the conversation we had about Afrofuturism, just to talk about what this looks in action. So Heather, do you want to start us off?
Sure. Talking about liberation practices in relationship to youth, I think that one of the things that we're leaning into is the idea of truly practicing how to listen to each other. So reflective and deep listening practices. And I think it's a profound liberatory practice because we come from a culture that takes listening for granted, almost as if we assume that we all just do it, but we don't do it well. Currently, I would argue, and that it does require some intentionality. And so we talk about what that means. What does it look like to reflective and deep listening? And those two are very different. So reflective listening has this way of kind of talking back or repeating what someone is saying as close to verbatim with capturing the emotion that was conveyed. And deep listening is really just staying as silent and present with whomever you're listening to. And so cultivating some of those practices, we've been kind of diving into that a little bit, the youth enrichment tips. So, yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
And I would take that a step further with our doula cohort in birth justice. During our trainings, we definitely talk about that deep listening and reflective listening, but also to sit unbiased, non-judgmental, and really just presenting facts, sitting there to be present with emotions, but to leave our emotions at the door when we're in the role of doula or listener or in service to someone else. And in that way, we can help them to strengthen their own healing, their own identity with what they're going through, so they can look for solutions on their own instead of providing a solution for someone. I think that's oratory as well, because when we're empowering someone to make a choice for themselves and leaving our own values and our own opinions behind, we're able to strengthen their self-belief, their self-perception.
Mm-hmm. Facts.
Liberation practices. I think I'm just going to go with, there's so many, and we try to make them a forefront here at Rooted, but I'm going to go with nervous system regulation as an overarching theme for everything that Heather and Vanessa lifted up, because if your nervous system is in fight or flight or freeze, you can't listen deeply. And if your nervous system is in strong survival mode, it might be hard to advocate for yourself and listen to your gut and intuition. So the overarching theme, I think, for Rooted and a lot of what we do is do you even understand what your nervous system is? Do you know that if you do certain breathing techniques or different practices, you can regulate it and then be more productive or high functioning in conflict or anything like that? So, and that is such a wide breadth of practices that you could have inside of it. So you could have a whole day talking about liberation practices for your nervous system. But I think it all starts there. There's some neuroscience research right now that says if we don't do better in our culture regulating our nervous systems, every other child by 2035 will have autism because of the stress hormones in the mother's system from living in our society. Yeah. So liberate yourself on all levels.
I'd say for me and for community healing, or just even outside of community healing, which is my branch, I think that a lot of the biggest liberation practice for myself is being in community with people. And like you guys said, to communicate and to speak and listen and like have that exchange. Like I believe like one of the reasons why I started to volunteer a lot in the community is because I believe that isolation and shame do a lot of harm. And I just don't think that anyone should be alone or feel alone. Like you're not like there's nothing new under the sun. You're not the first person to ever experience this problem. You're not the first person to ever think those thoughts. But we have to have community. We have to be in a relationship with one another to like pull out those things and like to make you feel seen and heard and held, you know?
Yeah.
And I just feel like isolation and shame just lead to a lot of brokenness. And so that's why with the Black and Brown Therapy Collective, I love it when people reach out and say, I need the support, you know? Like I need someone to talk to just to hear me. And I love it that people have that opportunity and not without having to worry about the finances, you know?
Yeah, it's huge.
In our mission, we talk about cultural liberation, and that isolation and shame really comes from over focus and in the mass culture on hyper-individualism. And so the practices that you're talking about, Coco, being in community with someone, that's lifting yourself out of over-identification with that individualism. So taking yourself back into community, engaging or re-engaging with people of other cultures and being able to, again, setting aside our judgments and opinions, but appreciate it just for what it is. Not only does it take us out of that uniculturalism, but it also helps us to see that all cultures are beautiful. So that's also quite liberating as well, not having to uphold any strata for people. It's really wonderful.
I was gonna say that. Hey, I like that we have the same mind on this stuff. I'll also just add too. One of my mentors and teachers says that 90% of the time when you're going for one-on-one talk therapy, the bottom root issue, whatever's happening, is around hyper-individualism because of the nature of our culture. And I love that Coco is bringing some healing groups into the mix, because then you have that bonding with community, that community care, that kind of story listening to affirm people in their hearts, their own personal stories. And then we have that disruption of that one-on-one culture. Not to say that that's a bad thing. Having a therapist one-on-one is dope. I have that, but not as the end all, right? Having all these other opportunities to build community while being healed, while finding liberatory practices.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's interesting too when you get people together. I remember when I was still in school, like our cohort, we had the option to bring our food to class because we were all like, you know, what do you call it, non-traditional learners? Or we could have a meal together. And the first class, our professor said that she encouraged us to have a meal together because breaking bread, you know what I mean? It's a great way to bond.
Yeah.
And she said that in her experience, the cohorts that didn't dine together were less connected.
Isn't that
And
something?
that was the first time I'd ever heard that. But even when because we do that here, like for all of our gatherings, we have like tea, we have snacks.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see the conversations and the bonding that comes from sharing bits of food. Like even last night, the game night, you know, we got into a conversation about pineapples because one of the fruit snacks had pineapples and the other one didn't. You know what I mean? And it's just really fun to watch people share. And that I just love those bits of connection. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I also thinking of liberation or as stepping back and keeping in mind what's best for the greater good. Like that kind of distancing. And I know you know, it kind of ties into, you know, collectivism, but like the how of it. And maybe we can talk a little bit more about, you know, what that looks like as an individual and the work that we can do as an individual amongst the collective of how do we create those liberatory spaces? How do we create those here? I know we break bread, there's some things that we do, some mindfulness about how we're showing up in our bodies. I think even just kind of, we're not socialized to notice when we feel anxious or when, you know, and so like even how do we know that we need our nervous systems regulated? You know what I mean? Like, how are we noticing what? Because we can be real comfortable in our dysregulated state and not even realize that we are dysregulated.
Some people are addicted to their dysregulated state.
So then, how do we know? You know, I don't know. What are those symptoms?
Well, for me, I guess when I feel something like that, it feels like a buzzing, unsettled feeling in my body. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I lived a long portion of my life without having body literacy. So learning what does that mean? Or even, is it okay to assign meaning to that? Are ideas to explore, you know, in our relationship to how do we show up with our body?
When I think of somatic experiencing and generative somatics, to the point that you're lifting up around that, and I think first, to know, you have to listen to not, you talked about deep listening, do you deeply listen to yourself, right?
Yeah.
In my yoga classes, we spend a lot of time just being quiet, and I'm like, if you take the time, it'll tell you. And I think we are also indoctrinated in our culture to be head up, really disconnected from our bodies. I would say that probably starts the minute they start trying to put you in the line to make you sit down in school, 3-4 years old, right? So you're creating this strong disconnection. So I think to know is to start taking time to be quiet and go through and listen.
Body scan.
And then identifying the difference between sensation and emotion.
Talk about it. Talk about
Some people think a sensation is an emotion, but it's really interesting when you're like, I'm feeling tired. What is that? Is that anger? Is that grief? And really spending some time with the sensation to match maybe an emotion or feeling, but then recognizing that feelings and emotions will pass and your body's staying.
Yeah.
So how do you take care of you,
Right.
and then figure out what that emotion means, right? Because it's tricky. And I think when I think about like the gun violence issues we have in our community, I think about anger, and I think about how that feels in the body, how you want to get it off of you, right? And not having the liberation tools to dissipate or metabolize the anger or the fear or the grief. And so I could talk for a long time about this. I'm gonna stop.
It's so
No,
great
that's
to
just
talk.
much drink because I remember a long time ago, like when me and my best friend like first started forming our relationship as friends, and I was really upset and I was not communicating well. And she said, "You know what? You're so shut off. You're emotionally unavailable to yourself." And she stormed out of the room. And I remember thinking, first of all, fuck you. Second of all, like, what does that even mean? You know what I mean? And then so finally,
Innocent part was up.
right. And then it took some time, and finally I realized I am, because you basically get trained that your emotions are not safe here. What you feel is not okay, so you just shut it down. And I've been working with this with my therapist, and she was saying, well, like you said, when you pay attention to the emotions. And I was like, but sometimes my head wants this, and sometimes my body wants this.
Yeah.
And she was like, well, they don't have to be on one accord. You know what I mean? So it's like your head might be feeling anxious, but you need space to think. So ask yourself, can I give my head 5 minutes to have space to think right now? And then your body might just be thirsty, or your body might be feeling cold or whatever. So, can you put on a jacket or grab a blanket or take off a layer, And it's really interesting how she's been helping me learn how to recognize what's happening and to address it, like in little ways that don't feel overwhelming. Because when people have like those big ideas, like the way you just explained it, a lot of people like myself who are just like in the beginning stages of their healing journey, you think, what does that look like? You know what I mean?
Yeah, like give me practical things that I can do.
Exactly.
Right.
Some yoga every Tuesday.
Exactly. Real talk though.
But yeah, I gotta say my biggest practice with it is that I make sure I have some water. Like when I don't know what to do, she was like, exactly. She was like, stop and get some water and like focus on your temperature.
Now, let me talk about the liberation practice.
Come on, talk about it.
Water is life. I swear, both my kids have some health issues, have had experience, And every little thing, scratch my finger, my knee hurts, my throat. Did you drink water?
The remedy for things.
Start there, because I think so often, because we're made of 75% water, that we forget.
Yeah.
Did I drink any water today?
Yeah.
That helped calibrate even what's going on in my brain for a second.
Right.
And then I think about the relationship to some Black and brown folks to water too. And hydrotherapy is real. That's a liberation practice to me. Even if you just put your hands in water,
Yeah.
be with it.
Yeah, or like the people who are suggesting that you hold ice if you're anxious. I mean, it's just water, solidified, but yeah, you think about the ways I used to tell my littles when they were real worked up, go splash some cold water on their face, and it would just transform. They would come out and like, I'm feeling a little bit better. It's just simple things.
When my eldest was in college, he would have some anxiety, panic around whatever, relationship or schoolwork, and I would like, she got in the freezer. Whatever bag of vegetables, I have him put right on his sternum, because you can tonify the vagal nerve for anxiety real quickly if you're kind of moving into panic attack. If you get to panic attack, it might not work, but if you feel like you're getting there, that's a good go-to, and he utilized that quite a bit in college to kind of balance himself.
Yeah.
And cold showers work, y'all.
Oh, no, I can do it. My low iron self, I can tell you. I'm in that whole cube, I just No, but for real, I love breath practices too. I don't know if any of you. And the holding of the breath. Inhale on a 4 count, holding on a 7, and then a slow 8 count on the way out. Ooh wee, that's my jam for anger. Been really working that one lately.
And I think that's a great segue into understanding that liberation doesn't mean, oh, I have all these practices, now I'm healed and perfect.
Oh,
It's never going to be that. I think part of the human fallacy is you think you have somewhere to arrive to,
that part.
but all it is just a journey.
It's a journey the whole
The
time.
whole time. You'd be on your deathbed like, damn it, it's the only thing I'm not didn't get there.
In the next incarnation.
Or maybe you're just okay with all that. But yeah, it's a journey, y'all. I know it's so cliche, but it's so real.
It's so real. It's so real.
And I also believe that maybe a liberation practice that works well for you at this season of your life might not be the one in the next.
Absolutely.
To be open-minded and hearted to opening yourself to other ways of being and belief systems to help you be liberated.
Yeah. It's a lifelong learning process.
And also to remember too, their practice, like you have to practice the practice.
Yes.
Like, cause I do that, like all the time for my strength. Like for me, my biggest liberation practice is 1, she has me slow down to drink water, but then 2, to go outside. For some reason, my body just wants to be outside. And I'm like, oh, I walked every day last week. I feel so good. I've been sleeping so great, blah, blah, blah. And then the next week, I'll be super anxious and sad. And she's like, oh, when was the last time you went for a walk? I was like, well, I walked every day last week. And she was like, did you walk this week? Well, I was busy. I had meetings, I had work, I had whatever. And she went, okay, after this, could you go for a 15-minute walk? And then it feels good though. You go outside, that fresh air and the breeze on your skin. And it's something about it just like settles something inside of me. And so I have to remember that practice. You have to keep,
That consistency, even if it's small amounts, Yeah.
Yeah, we can have theories till the cows come home. If it's not moved into practice, you're not really moving into liberation.
What about you, Miss V? You're pretty quiet over there.
Oh, for my liberation practices, I really enjoy writing when I'm by myself. Some breath work, and yeah, I'm gonna go with being with people, communicating with my therapist, my partner, people who know me from different walks, can help me to remind myself, to take it easy. Yeah.
And so I'm curious, since we talked about emotions, like how we feel, like, can we just go around and explain, like, when you feel really activated, like a lot of emotion, like, what do you do in that moment to help bring yourself, maybe if not back to baseline, at least to help yourself get through the interaction? If it's like, because I know that looks different for everybody, so I just like if you could share.
What was the accent again?
Like how we respond if we're really activated. Like, a lot of emotion either. There you go. I feel activated. Everything activates me. Oh, so it's whatever activates you. Like, it's just, you know what I mean? Exactly. Like, in that moment, how do you,
So like if it's anger, I do a specific thing. If it's grief, I do a specific thing. So
Nice. Pick one. Pick one, yeah.
Anger, probably some very, very intensified cleaning. Hardcore, like till I sweat on the lip to kind of metabolize it. And then after that, I'll kind of move into some somatic movement dancing or some fluid stretching or something for anger. And then for grief, I cry right away. I want to have that waterworks kind of make space. And then I do hands-on Reiki and breath work for grief. I think sadness and grief is more like that. So I'll leave it at that.
What about you, Miss Heather?
It depends. I definitely I have to move my body. So cleaning or just some like fervent dance or just putting some music on to help kind of calm myself. I like the breath. I try to do the breath work depending on how elevated I am. Sometimes I need to process with a trusted friend. I need to bounce ideas off. I need to vent. I need to get it out. I also think there's something really powerful of sometimes I hold back my voice. Like I constrict, or when I'm angry, I just shut down. And so projecting or even yelling, not at someone. I've learned not to do that. In the car all alone, it really kind of helps me. Just say all the things, and then I come back to like kind of calm homeostasis, but I always have to bring it back to like a breath practice or something that gives me some space into my self-energy. Grief, I'm definitely a crier, but I'm a crier in the bathtub. I will cry in the bath and sing, and then cry and then sing. But then when I get out of the bath, I usually feel really good. So hydrotherapy, water, being in water is my practice for sure.
It's so interesting that we all clean when we're angry.
Because I think really we want to break shit and tear shit up.
Yeah,
But that's not productive, and then it makes our future self
Socially acceptable.
Yes.
Okay, real talk. Like, I'm not the most, enlightened person, all right? Like, I break shit all the time. Like, when I feel upset, like, I can't tell you how many. I don't know if it's because I'm an Aries. I don't know if it's because whatever. But I'm a big fan of breaking stuff. The only issue I've learned over the years is like when you break things, you have to clean it up. And that's not fun. Like, oh my gosh, the last time I shattered some glass, it sounded so nice and it felt so good, but glass went everywhere.
Yeah, not fun.
And I got a little piece like stuck in my clog and like cut my, it was a mess. And I'm like, and it makes me overthink it. So I'm like, see, if you had just calmed yourself down, your foot wouldn't be cut, and you know what I mean? So
But there's something about the somatics of anger and how it needs to express itself. I think that's why, if you look at the science behind even like cuss words, fuck has 3 plosives, which takes energy from in to out. It feels good. So there's some science behind it. It's not, my kids used to take a bat to a burn pit and just hit it. I just used to let them hit it. And then one of my sons used to run around, like, go take a run around the block. And then at one point when phone books were going out, I was like, go rip up some of them. He loved it.
even the sound of the tearing.
It helped
I
him.
used to make my eldest drum when he was real angry. Because when he wants to just shut down real hardcore, he felt like it was important to get it out of his body.
Yeah.
So he would take his drum and he'd be like, and then within 5 minutes he's like done with anger. He's fleeing it.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, that was kind of dope.
Yeah.
But once he was beyond middle school, he was over that.
What about you, Miss V?
If I'm angry, the first thing I do is take a really deep breath in and hold it for as long as I can. And just keep saying to myself, I'm angry, this will pass. I am angry, this will pass, and then blowing it out really slowly.
Yeah.
And then opening my eyes. And I like to spin just my body, so I'll spin in a circle a couple times. To get that out, I don't know if that's like the wash machine or something, but getting that out. And when I'm anxious and overwhelmed with anxiety, this is my secret. I just told Carmen the other day, but I will rub my eyebrow. So if you see me sitting at my desk doing this, it's because I'm either super deep in thought or I'm trying to solve a problem that feels unsolvable. So and I, as a birth worker and a studier of Penny Simkin, I see it as one of the 3 R's that goes with birth, which is rhythm, ritual, and I can't remember the third one, but it's definitely rhythmic, it's ritualistic, it happens almost without me knowing it this time. So, yeah, a little self-stim gets me there.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think anger, now that I've stopped smashing shit all the time, I sleep a lot. Like, it's still really hard for me. Like, my therapist tells me that's an escape. Like, I'm trying to get away from it. I still have trouble, like, connecting with that part of myself. And to keep it all very real, I have a hard time even identifying the emotions sometimes. Yeah. That's why I still focus a lot on, have some cool water, or if I'm feeling cold, have some tea, because like I'm trying to baby step my way there, because I spent most of my life not feeling able to do these things, and like I just shut down hard. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
So like I'm trying really hard to stop saying, you know what I mean? Exactly, man. But yeah, I still sleep a lot. Like I nap. I've gotten a bit more into art lately.
Yeah.
But for some reason that comes from sadness. Like I feel like that comes out, But with anger, I haven't really found a really productive way to deal with it yet.
Should we host a twerk anger?
Yeah.
Twerk.
Twerk it out.
Twerk.
I know, right?
I was also thinking about some sort of like art experience, of like I've seen like where you're like flicking paint at a big canvas, or I've also seen like people maybe putting it on their feet and something on the ground, you're doing some stomping, or
That'd be nice.
yeah, it would be nice, wouldn't it? I've seen some really cool things too, of like ways in which you can express it and then look back at the expression of anger in a visual way. Yeah.
Nice, that's beautiful. Well, thank you. I feel like we're complete.
Yeah, feels good. Till next time.
Yeah.
Deuces.